Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to day 19 of the 10-year YouTube celebration. On the last episode, I talked all about doing wrestling predictions. And on this one, I think it's about time to talk about all of the issues and thoughts that I have on WWE 2K20. And that may sound weird, because why would I talk about that? Like, it's well documented how bad that game was. Even people who don't care about wrestling know about it, you know? It went viral. So, yeah. But, I mean, I made 3 videos back in 2019 on the game. I did my first one, which was my thoughts on the pre-release footage, the things that 2K and the creators themselves were, the things that 2K showed us and the things that the creators were allowed to record themselves at the event that year. So I talked all about that and genuinely wasn't impressed at all. And I really wanted to be, you know, I had no expectations, but I also had no expectations for going into 2K19. I really didn't like 2K18. And I had super low expectations going into 19. And we heard literally nothing up until, you know, a month before release, when finally they drop a trailer at the same time that they're flying the creators out at that time to go record footage, like they, would always do. And that trailer just blew everyone away. It blew me away. It blew all the creators who were there recording their own gameplay. It blew everyone away. It was such a cool, also wacky trailer that really showed in a cool way what some of like the My Rise stuff was going to be. And yeah, it was cool. Well, I said My Rise, but it wasn't My Rise yet. It was still my career. But yeah, no, it was really cool. Again, they just kind of blew us all away, and they got us hyped admittedly. And then I ended up enjoying 19 a lot because the thing is, right, I still liked 18 to a degree, but my biggest issue with it was the gameplay was too slow for me. I genuinely think that, and I still think that. Like, I can go back and play it now, and I'm more used to it, but I think that's because... I think that's more because I don't care for the current games. Like 22, 23, and 24, I have so many issues with that eventually, I swear I will talk about them. I will eventually. I need to, but yeah, not getting to that right now. I have a lot of issues with 22, 23, and 24. So I think part of that is why I can go back and play 18 and have less problems with it now. But yeah, so the gameplay was too slow for me, and that led me to not putting as much time into it as I would have. That led me to losing interest and not wanting to continue my original universe mode, which I was super invested in and wanted to continue, among other things as well. Like, that's not the only reason, but yeah. But when I started playing 19, I immediately noticed, oh hey, like, this feels good. Like, they increased the speed, not by much, but just enough to make it still be this simulation style wrestling game, but it feels better to play. It feels a bit quicker, lighter on its feet, and it just worked all around, making it like the perfect example of that style that they had been trying to do. Which I personally think the only step, I think the only step before then that is close to 19 is personally for me 17. I think 17 feels good to play. There's a lot I like about the gameplay of 17, but when you dig into everything else with 17, it does drop quite a few. But regardless, that's not entirely the point here. But yeah, so I liked 19 quite a bit, and it became definitely not my most played wrestling game. It's my most played wrestling game that I actually have the stats for and could show you, but I know for a fact it's not. Because I can tell you for sure 2K14 is higher. Like, 2K14 is higher for sure. I guarantee SVR 2010, being my first wrestling game, is higher than 2K19 as well. I would be willing to bet fucking money on that one. Here Comes the Pain is probably higher as well. But anyway, we're getting off topic here. But yeah, like, long story short, TLDR, you know, after not really liking 18 at the time, they blew us away with the trailer. I enjoyed the trailer. I liked the game. Yeah, I thought the improvements that they made to 19 were good and made me like the game, and I put a lot of time into the game. So, that being said, 20, I still wasn't excited for, you know? Like, when I quickly learned in 2019, earlier in that year, that, 2K and Visual Concepts, they didn't renew the license to work with Ukes. It's like, okay, that's strange. And then I saw an interview with Brian Williams, who was still with Ukes at the time. He's back with 2K now. He's back with Visual Concepts now, but he was still with Ukes at the time. So he did that, and he'd said that, like, the last thing that anyone at Ukes did was the DLC for 19. That was it, and then they were done. Because he said he personally, the last thing he did was the Ricochet DLC for 19. It's like, oh, well, okay, so that's strange. Just not using the developer who's been the developer for so long, since the year 2000, for, you know, this franchise specifically, and even then they were making the games before then as well. Or making some games before then as well, you know. But yeah, like, the long-running SmackDown series started in 2000. That's, yeah, it feels weird to not have them. So that definitely made me, like, less interested and way more skeptical, you know, than I already was, you know, because Uke certainly wasn't perfect, and like they definitely had some bad games, in the franchise, you know, certainly, and I mean, even personally thinking, like, even moving forward, personally thinking Fight Forever does have potential. It's got so much missed potential, and there's a lot there that's not good either. So yeah, Ukes isn't perfect, certainly, and again, they have their issues as well. But just hearing that initially, I was like, okay, that's definitely throwing me off. Like, I'm very skeptical, even more than I already was. And then, again, you know, we went so long without hearing a single thing, you know? And then again, a very small time period before release, they finally give us something. And then, of course, flying the creators out to record the footage. We get to the pre-release footage, which I reacted to, using mostly screenshots and a few clips from Pulse and TGC Gaming, most notably in my video for it. And again, I just immediately was not impressed. My skepticism was clearly shining through. I thought immediately from the footage I saw that everything looked, once again, way too slow. And again, at the time, it did kind of remind me a bit of, like, the issues I had with 2K18. I don't remember if I said it or not, but I definitely know, like, it had to have been some sort of, like, thought in the back of my mind at the very least. Which, again, when someone went through and, like, and then during the pandemic, I think it was during 2020, they went through and they went through the files of 2K20 and found, oh hey, all of these files are based off of 2K18, which then perfectly explained it. It's like, okay, so there's that. You know, so it was based off 2K18, which some people theorize it could have even been based off of the the Switch port of 2K18, since that wasn't done by Yuke's, it was done by a completely different studio. So if they had that source code, and like if they didn't have the original source code from Yuke's for 2K18 and that was all they had to work off of, then yeah, that would really explain it, and then that would explain a lot of the bugs and everything. But there's no confirmation on that. I can't say that for sure. I just know that the files in 2K20 on the PC version were very clearly marked 2K18. I do know that. So yeah, that explained a lot. Everything felt too slow. Obviously, we know how many glitches and bugs. I mean, again, the wrestling games, like the WWE games specifically, have always been super buggy and glitchy. Oh, every iteration of the every iteration of each and every game every year had their own issues because they're all based off of legacy code, and technically speaking, they are still based off of legacy code. Because that's just how yearly release titles are made, especially yearly release sports games. But even to side note it a little bit, look at something like when Activision was milking the fuck out of Guitar Hero. You know, Neversoft primarily, but a few other developers as well, they had so little time that, yeah, they primarily had one engine that they would work off of at a time, so they end up making, World Tour, Van Halen, Metallica, Smash Hits, they end up having quite a few of these games, 4 or 5 games, all based off this one engine with very similar code that they're just altering. And admittedly, the quality of those games actually, for the most part, is a lot better than the WWE games. Don't get me wrong. You look at the quality overall, and they feel more complete, even at the time having just a few months between games releasing. Whereas sports games with a whole year. So that's a different conversation though. But yeah, that's kind of the point I was trying to illustrate. You might get it. But yeah, overall, just sitting there watching all that early footage, trying to collect my thoughts. Again, it all just blew me away. And, I was seeing inconsistencies in how the models looked and things I really didn't like about the models. I was seeing weird gameplay speed discrepancies, and you'd have some of these new moves that they added in that were mocapped way too fast, and then you would have some moves look way too slow, and that's something that's still in the games now in 22, 23, and 24, despite them making a new engine as well. That's still a thing, and you'll have some moves that are way too fast, unrealistically fast, combined with certain moves that are too slow, and you have moves that, again, will still just have this random little pause in the middle of the animation that just throws the entire thing off, so it's just this really weird thing that's still in the games now, but it was super apparent at the time, and of course it still is, at least to me anyway. But obviously, because of, doing my thoughts on the pre-release footage, that's literally how I titled it, because of that video and putting my thoughts out there on this game, on what I've seen but I haven't played, I was like, okay, I do have to get the game, I do, even if I really didn't want to at first, you know what I mean, but I did. I didn't pre-order it like I had for almost all the games for a long time up to that point. I didn't pre-order it. I didn't really anything, So what I did, but I went up to local game store at the time, got the game day of, put it in, and at the time I was still living with my mom, and we were in between leaving one internet company and joining another, so, and like that other one hadn't been set up yet, so we actually had no internet at the time, so I literally played 2K20 like completely like pre-day one patch or anything, no updates whatsoever, literally what they printed on the fucking disc, which I didn't even think about at the time, because I remember Pulse tweeting out that the version that they were playing on, actually, that the creators were recording during the event, he looked and it's like, oh shit, this is version 1.01. Like, this is the day one patch. It's like, oh shit. And I don't remember. Will it show me by chance? I've got the video pulled up. I wonder quickly, will it show me? I want to know. I don't think so. 'Cause if I remember right, I want to say it just puts it on the thing, right? Yeah, I think it puts it on the main menu if I remember right. And there's literally no version icon anywhere on the main menu that I'm playing in this video, the pre-day one patch video. So yeah, like this is literally what they printed on the disc. I had no internet to get any updates at the time. So yeah, and like as I went through, I played for, I don't know exactly what it was, probably about 2.5 to 3 hours that I played. I condensed it down to 2 hours of footage for the video, and yeah, the more I played, the more I realized the only thing that is even remotely playable at that point was just one-on-one normal matches. Like, you couldn't really add a stipulation, you couldn't really add in any weapons, you couldn't add in more people, really, or else you would start really just breaking the game even more than you would otherwise, you know? And yeah, so that became an issue, and even in a one-on-one normal match, I got glitches I'd never seen before. Playing the game for so long, I'd never seen some of these things, even in like a one-on-one normal match, which I thought was, again, also weird. And then, like, the more I try to dig into options and all sorts of stuff like that, trying to set things up for future use, like, things just weren't working as they should, you know? And things didn't really improve all that much, you know, playing the game with patches. And I know that they did keep patching it, but they eventually did stop, not too much improved. We'll use Universe as an example. In 2K20, there were some things in Universe for this game that just there are some things with the mode just being completely broken, you know? Things just didn't work, the mode crashing all the time, and some of those issues are literally still issues in the games today. And like, that's a huge problem, you know? And I think this is really where I said it in the predictions video, and that's definitely partly true, but I think also this game and my reaction and how I felt is also part of what led me to like being so burnt out with wrestling, and like just kind of being done with it at that point, you know. And I still haven't completely come back to it either, but like the things that I got every year, always having a good time, even when I didn't particularly care for a game, I would always put time in, have a good time, and always make my own fun. And that felt exponentially harder on 2K20, you know? And I said, in my first impressions, the pre-day one patch video, about the first 2.5 minutes or so, about the first 2:15 or so, I say a very kind of like poignant speech. I think still works, you know? Still works, still applies. But yeah, I said a really good line that, paraphrasing a little bit, but it was something to the degree of, if you can't even get your experienced players, the people playing year after year, on board and excited for this game, how the hell do you think or expect to bring in anyone new? And your goal should always be, I mean, obviously, have the people who have the experienced players, have the people who do play every year, but your goal should always be keep bringing in new players. And how the hell can you expect new players to give a shit if the experienced players don't even give a shit? Again, paraphrasing, that's not exactly what I said, but yeah, it was something to that degree, you know. And I think that's perfect, you know. So yeah, that's kind of my story, and I guess a kind of brief format, you know. 2K20 wasn't good. There's so many issues with it, obviously. So many issues I personally have with it. They tried to support it. They tried to patch a lot of it. None of it really worked. Eventually they gave up. It's still a broken game. And, yeah. That's the TLDR of it anyway. But that's all I got. That was day 19 of the 10-year YouTube celebration. All of my thoughts and issues with 2K20 of WWE, that is. Should always specify that, because most people will hear 2K and think NBA, and that's fair. But yeah, that's all I got. I hope you join me for day 20 with whatever that happens to be, and until next time, I'll see you later. Bye, guys.